When we give this world back to God, what are we doing? We're just, as the song points out, we're just making sure that we, first of all, put God first and in all and everything. Just lean on God even more. And so I really appreciate that song. Thank you, Alethea, for picking that out. And so today we're talking about Through the Looking Glass. Now, this is just not a story about Alice in Wonderland, the second edition of it, where she suddenly finds herself through the glass after sitting in a chair with her cat and then falling asleep, finding herself in this strange land where nothing makes sense. It's not about that, but I did kind of find it interesting that it seems more and more every day we're finding ourselves in a strange new land where things just don't make sense. 2019 looked one way, and now 2020 looks another. And when coming up with this sermon, I was thinking to myself, well, what would happen if suddenly one day we woke up and we couldn't remember who and what we were? We couldn't remember the highs, the lows, the past successes and failures. What would happen then if we didn't have some type of past to go back on? I started thinking, well, what makes our identity anyway? And so even though waking up suddenly and not knowing who you are and what you are in your past, it may sound like a funny predicament or just something that is out of this world. It's something that had me thinking. And it had me thinking about what this identity, this physical identity, what I've attached it to. Have I attached it to my successes and failures? Have I attached it to who I was yesterday and who I claim to be tomorrow? Or am I more than that? And when we look at that, our particular moment of existence, I realize that everything from my past has led me to this exact intersection in life. So it can't be all that bad. But if I had forgotten about it, then I might not know exactly where I am and where I'm going and how far I've come. But we're also told in Genesis, if we look at Lot, him and his wife and his family, they were told that, flee Sodom and Gomorrah. And and the voice of God spoke to them and said, do not look back. And Lot's wife looked back and turned into a pillar of salt. And this reminds us, first of all, salt representing the preservers. And memory is a preserver of time. And when we can look forward without having to, we get our lessons from the past, but move steadily forward and not look back, we can release those things. And so that's what this talk is about. It's about releasing that which no longer serves us and to step forward with strength into the future. One of those things, though, I also started to realize is that without realizing or remembering a past, and sometimes you forget about the beautiful friendships that you've created throughout the years, Ralph, and also those experiences of growth that helped us to get to where we're at. And so without these steps, these milestones in our life, we may not have the skills or remembering those milestones and everything that we've had to learn along the way. We may not have those skills in order to continue us moving in this now moment. So forgetting the past is one thing, but you always take those lessons with you. And when we harbor those lessons, when we harbor, let's say, the resentments of yesterday and bring them into today, what we're doing is we're acting like Lot's wife and preserving those things instead of releasing them. We somehow get trapped in our past, and we're not allowing ourselves to move forward in the future. And when we dig a little bit deeper, and as I talked about earlier, we're peeling back these layers of personality, we realize that we're more than our personality. We're more than this sum of experiences that we've gone through. We're much more than that. But every day when we wake up, sometimes our consciousness just stays in this place and says, well, you're 60 years old, you have high blood pressure. Yesterday, you had a hurt toenail, and so that's hurting again today. So we bring those memories of past hurts with us, of what age or what the world tells us age is supposed to look like. And so not only are we bringing our own experiences, suddenly we're bringing the experience of our parents as well, or our teachers, or what have you. So one can say, yes, I am the sum of my experiences, and my personality is made up of this. And then you could also go on to say, I'm also the sum of everybody else's experience as well. And a good point to make with this, and what I mean by that, is if you were told as a child growing up that something was impossible for you, or it just wasn't for you, you might have brought that and that belief into the present moment with you. And I have an example of my own thing. I was about 7 or 8, and I was at a dinner party with my parents. And it's a small, little, minuscule thing, but there was a platter of cheese, because I'm always talking about food. There was a platter of cheese that I really wanted to get my hands on. And I went to go pick a particular cheese that I was unfamiliar with, and the hostess said to me, "Oh, that cheese is not for kids. It's too bold and rich for you." And I didn't know at 7 or 8, and I probably don't even know now what bold and rich means, but I didn't know at the time that my subconscious mind was being impressed upon that there's something that an adult, somebody that maybe I looked up to, or because they were an adult, I had held some value to. So based on their experiences of cheese, suddenly I took that on. And it wasn't until years later when I found out that I actually love bold and rich cheeses. I actually love new experiences. But for years and years, I had allowed that one instance prevent me from seeking higher ground or trying new experiences. And how many times is a kid told that, you're not tall enough for basketball, or you're not smart enough to be an astronaut? Think about how many missed opportunities there are because the adults in our lives impress upon their own beliefs into a small child's mind. And it may not hit you right now that something like that has occurred for you, but I want you to think back as to those experiences in your life where you felt that there was some limitation. And if you go back, if you go down the rabbit hole, you'll probably find that you were told these things by someone that you trusted at a very early age in life. And what does that mean? That just means that there's something for us to heal. And our parents and our teachers and our friends don't deliberately do this to us. But what's happening is we're taking on some of their fears and some of their belief systems and not creating our own through our own experiences. So yes, we're the sum of these things, and then we're the sum of some other people's baggage as well. And this is this knowingness where we have to just release ourselves from that. Because right here, right now, we were called to be something much more than this personality, than these fears. And this is what we're seeing outpictured in the world. If you turn on the news, it doesn't matter whatever channel you want to turn it to. The world will try to tell you that God is absent, that there's something else in charge, that there's some fear or some dis-ease to be weary of. And what does this do for us? Well, what happens is whenever we get into a fear state of mind, we start to lower our immune systems. Everything becomes compromised in the body. But we're taking on somebody else's belief, calling it our own, and not to say that we shouldn't look at the news or keep up with what the current headlines are. But I know that I do not need the news to tell me that my God is good. That I never need anything or anyone out there to show me the miracles that God can do in my own life, in my community, and this world. And really, there is probably the chance that that news media outlet is not telling you how good your God is. It's telling you how maybe helpless we are in this situation. Because what has happened is that we have forgotten our true identity. We have looked or fell down the rabbit hole, and we woke up one day not realizing that we had taken on this fear identity, this dis-ease identity, and we've projected it out to the world. And what does the world do? The world will always, always, always mirror back to you your belief system. The world will always tell you what you truly believe about how big God is in your life. And if you have a very big God, believe me, the world will look a little bit different than this. And when your God is this small, well, the world seems humongous. So who are we giving and what are we giving our power to? Now, in changing all of this, there's some things to remember. Some of us want to go out there and protest or politic or, do some other things out there. But I say, and I feel that change really, first of all, begins within us. And this is something that I had to come to terms with as well. Now, there's a quote by Confucius, and Confucius was a Chinese philosopher way back, I don't even know, but back before I was born. And Confucius emphasized personal and governmental morality, correctness of social gatherings and relationships, kindness, justice, and sincerity. And he's often quoted, and I'm just going to say this off the top of my mind, but I know it's on the slide there, that when there's light in the soul, there is beauty in the person. When there's beauty in the person, there is harmony within the home. When there's harmony within the home, there's order in the nation. When there's order in the nation, there is peace in the world. But notice, Confucius started with the individual, started with that soul presence, brought it back to the cosmic instead of the outer realm. And while marching and petitioning and protesting seem to be worthwhile causes, they are all still often effects of an unhealed and seeming separate mind. A few years ago, Reverend Tim Lytle and I went to this talk, and we were both keynote speakers. And they were asking us questions, and this was a very active social justice group. And suddenly, it hit me out of nowhere when they started asking me these questions on what I should do and what I would do when there's an injustice. And all of a sudden, Luke chapter 6, verse 42 popped up into my mind. And what I remembered from that verse was Jesus saying, how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck that is in your eye, when you yourself do not see the plank, not the speck, you don't even see the plank in your own eye? Hypocrite. First remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove that speck that is in your brother's eye. We are told to first look at ourselves before we even go out there and start meddling with that, to look within. There are some good wisdom teachings in the Bible, I tell you. And so there's nothing to be scared of when it comes to that. And while I was sitting there, I almost felt like I was a sitting duck, because I realized that I hadn't done some of this work, that I still had these fear thoughts. I still got angry pretty easily. There's a lot of judgment going on in my own head. And how could I ever affect change when I had not changed myself? In that moment, I was called to be silent. And I know it might have looked a little bit odd as I responded with a head nod, but I couldn't speak something that wasn't true for me. I realized that there was still a lot of inner work to be done, that I was somehow feeling that the world was still attacking when it was my own attack thoughts that kept me awake at night or kept me from being friendly to somebody that normally I would probably not be around. But yes, the world is only mirroring back to you, back to me, my thoughts and beliefs. The mind is causative, and the world is that effect. It's not the other way around. It's oftentimes we look to the outside world and say, oh, it made me mad, or I'm sad because you did this. Really, when you understand who you are in God and who God is in you, there is nothing that can move you. You remain still in that peace. So I wanted to do a quick exercise to demonstrate that at some inner level of the very deep recesses of our mind, that there's still some work to be done. And so with the first slide, and I want you to notice how you feel. So you see a traffic jam. Normally, how would you respond to this? This is, the H1, you're on your way home, and here we go. The 5 o'clock jam session begins. Do you get easily irritated? Do you suddenly look over to the guy next to you and wish he would move out of your way so you could get home sooner? Or that person that cut you off, is there some type of feeling that arises? And then the second slide, and the second slide is just to calm you down. So we got a bunch of babies. All right. Now the third slide, we have the Occupy Wall Street. How does it feel to you when you see people gathering, demonstrating in a somewhat peaceful manner? But now the third slide, we have the Black Lives Matter movement. What type of feelings or judgments come up about that? And the last slide, it could cause mixed emotions. You have the current president and the former president together. Each one may generate some different type of feelings. But until you can look at that picture and just see the divinity, it doesn't matter which one, both of them hopefully, you can see the divinity of God within even that which you think is a tyrant or not out for the good of the American people, whatever it is, whatever judgment that comes up, then you have no business going out there and demonstrating until you can demonstrate within you your ability to see past these appearances, to see past the personality into the presence of God within. And I think I have another baby picture right there just to cool them off for some. I do that. I know my people. So this is where we're at. This is where I found myself. Was suddenly I had to get back to the real business, and that was me minding my own business. Okay, I got to be true about it. I can't be up here preaching and teaching and everything else and being a hypocrite. It's really something that requires every day to be on it. And so before the broken down bodies happen, before the ruined relationships or the fluctuating finances or the ravishing riots, we are called to do this inner work instead. And 2020 will always be a year to remember because the mind was exposed. And so I have a couple of memes up there for you. And yeah, this is funny that people now generate these memes. If somebody coughs somewhere, suddenly everybody's looking. Or, we're kind of sitting at the edge of our seat wondering what's going to happen next in 2020. But have we done the work? Instead of looking at social media or the news and who's doing what and where, we are called to come and bring it back, bring back that boat, that thought, whatever, and remain still in your own mind first. In June, because I found myself so focused on what was happening with the coronavirus, what was happening with race relations in the world, and everything in between. I decided that from July 1st to my birthday, July 31st, that I was going to be on a fast. Now, I'm not talking about a food fast. I know I'm skinny, got it. I'm talking about a fast from all social media. I'm talking about a fast from the news, from conversations that would be negative in general, and I'm still working on it, and then looking at my thoughts. Seeing whenever I have an interaction or a disagreement, what are the thoughts that come up for me? And right then and there, when I can remember, that's when I go within and do some forgiveness work. And I call upon that person that was really willing and ready to be my mirror. I call on forgiveness from them, forgiveness for myself. I free them from the chains of my mind that bind them to acting like the villain in my mind. And I set us both free. And so this work, it's day 11 or 12 actually of this. And believe me, they don't call it the work for no reason. This stuff will get you thinking. But it's so worth it. Since I have released and unplugged from the media, I am a lot happier. I can tell you that my mind does not go racing as much. And I feel safe and secure because I'm starting to listen to that inner voice. I'm starting to do those practices, those spiritual practices of meditation and prayer and forgiveness that always work. And that's what we're being called to do. And so if you don't have a mirror out, because I want to do some mirror work before we conclude today. So get your mirror out. I got mine right here. There's Ralph's mirror. And before we start, I want to first say, don't look at it and then suddenly point out the pimple that just popped up or the wrinkle that you wish would go away or the gray hair that sprung out of nowhere overnight. What we're looking at is beyond the physical appearance. But sometimes we just have to see it for ourselves, and we have to claim it. If you can't claim your own good, there is no need going to your boss and asking them to respect you or your wife or your husband or anyone else. You have to be your own advocate. And so this is what this mirror work does, is that it teaches us to love ourselves again, to respect our minds, to be mindful of what we're telling ourselves in the story. So let's take our mirror and look at ourselves. Good golly, Miss Molly, looking good today. So what we're doing is we're just looking at the eye and not noticing the redness or anything else from the lack of sleep, but really taking a look and seeing that God is there. God is that presence that animates. And start speaking some encouraging words to yourself, like you are beautiful, you are worthy. Maybe there was a story of limitation that a parent told you a long time ago, that you may not be able to do something, or something was impossible. Start speaking words of encouragement to yourself. Convince yourself you're never too young or too old to make a difference in this world. And when you look at yourself, see beyond what appears in this mirror. See to the very core and essence of that Christos, that anointed one within. Start to love yourself. Start to take care of yourself. This is where the work begins. Be mindful of the mind food, the news stories that you're sending to yourself. And every day, say an encouraging affirmation while looking in the mirror. And so I invite you to repeat after me using your own name. Johanna, you are a beautiful creation of God. Go ahead. You are a beautiful creation of God. You can do all things through God which strengthens you. You can do all things through God which strengthens you. every day you show up with more compassion, more kindness, and more love. And saying that, how does that feel? When you start to speak these words to yourself, we're not trying to convince ourselves of anything. What we're doing is trying to look in that mirror, through that looking glass, and remember something that God has never forgotten about you. That you are the child of the Most High. That you deserve all the riches in life. That no matter what your past was, no matter where you're going, like the prodigal son, doesn't matter what yesterday, if we squandered something, if we didn't show up nice enough. What matters is now, that we can always find our rest when we go back to that kingdom within, that we are always welcome there, that we are always worthy of everything that the kingdom affords. And so I say thank you for doing the work every day, whether you want to fast with me through media to the end of July or not. At least do the mirror work every day and speak words of encouragement. I promise you, your outer reflection will give a corresponding action. And remember, God loves you and I love you back. Mahalo.